New maps are on the table. In the tense, quiet, air-conditioned rooms of Doha, far from the smoke, dust, and unending grief of Gaza, lines are being drawn, debated, and redrawn. These are not just lines on paper. They represent the potential future of an entire territory, the fate of millions of lives, and the fragile architecture of a possible peace. Hamas is reportedly poring over these new maps, presented by international mediators, which meticulously outline the zones Israel intends to control even after a supposed ceasefire. This is the heart of the negotiation, the true invisible battlefield where the war after the war is being decided. Today, we delve deep into this high-stakes geopolitical chess match. What do these new maps truly reveal about Israel's long-term strategy for Gaza? We will dissect the critical sticking points, from the control of specific city blocks to the explosive issue of prisoner exchanges that could shatter any hope for a deal. And we will confront the most pressing question of all. Is the cautious optimism whispered by diplomats a genuine sign of a breakthrough, or just another fleeting mirage in the desert of this long and brutal conflict? Welcome to a story of invisible borders and immense consequences. The documents currently under review by Hamas leadership are a stark departure from previous proposals, yet they paint a picture that is still profoundly challenging for the Palestinian side. The new maps, delivered by mediating countries, reportedly lay out a vision of Gaza with a significant, lingering Israeli military footprint. This isn't a vague concept, it's geographically specific. We're talking about most of the northern town of Beit Hanun, a critical gateway to the Strip, and a symbol of the initial ground invasion. We're talking about half of Rafah, the southern city that has become a refuge for over 1 million displaced people and a flashpoint for international concern. Control over half of Rafah could mean control over the vital border crossing with Egypt. The maps also allegedly section off the neighborhoods of Huza and Abbasan in southern Khan Yunis, a key Hamas stronghold, and a large, strategic portion of Gaza City's heavily contested Shujaiya district, a place that has been the scene of some of the fiercest urban combat. For Hamas, these maps are being evaluated through intense internal consultations and discussions with other Palestinian factions like Islamic Jihad. This isn't just a negotiation for them. It's a moment of critical, potentially legacy-defining decision-making for the entire Palestinian resistance movement. To understand the gravity of this new proposal, you have to look at what came before. Previous maps, which were summarily dismissed, showed Israel maintaining full military control over even larger swaths of territory, including all of Rafah, the entirety of Beit Hanun, and Beit Lahiya, and extensive parts of Khan Yunis. Those proposals were seen as a demand for surrender, not a basis for negotiation, and were flatly rejected by Hamas. The current maps, while still granting Israel significant control, therefore represent a shift, a concession perhaps, but one that is still miles away from Hamas's own stated position. The group's primary demand remains unchanged, a complete return to the withdrawal lines that were agreed upon back in January. This would involve an Israeli pullback of between 390 and 1,100 meters from key areas, a move that would restore a semblance of the pre-war status quo. The gap between these two visions, a lingering strategic occupation versus a near-total withdrawal, is the treacherous chasm where these negotiations will either find a bridge or fall into oblivion. And yet, despite this chasm, there are whispers of progress. Israeli media outlets, often a barometer for the official mood, have begun to report a cautious sense of optimism. The influential Yediot Ahronot newspaper, citing sources close to the talks, went as far as to say there were promising signals that an agreement could be reached within 2 weeks. 2 weeks. It seems an impossibly short time frame to solve a conflict that has raged for months and has roots stretching back decades. This optimism is echoed by a representative from one of the Arab mediator nations. Speaking anonymously to Israel's public broadcaster, Khan, the diplomat confirmed that most of the disputes over the deployment of Israeli forces have been resolved, leaving only limited remaining issues. The atmosphere, this diplomat described, was one of cautious optimism. But this is where the picture becomes murky. A classic case of diplomatic he said, she said, played out on a global stage. While mediators express hope, an unnamed Israeli official tells a different story. "We've shown flexibility," the official reportedly said, but Hamas isn't responding. This is corroborated by the fact that, according to Khan, Hamas has not yet issued a formal, official response to this latest comprehensive proposal. They are reviewing, consulting, and discussing, but the world is still waiting for a definitive answer. The complexity of this diplomatic back and forth is truly staggering, with every word and every silence being scrutinized for meaning. If you are finding this detailed breakdown of the negotiation process insightful, take a moment to hit that like button. It helps us know what content you value most, and it helps our analysis reach a wider audience. So, beyond the maps, what are these limited remaining issues that could still derail the entire process? The first major hurdle is the prisoner exchange. While the territorial disputes over troop deployment have reportedly seen progress, the human calculus of the prisoner swap remains a profound point of contention. The Yediot Ahronot report noted that Hamas remains hesitant about the number of Palestinian prisoners to be released in exchange for each Israeli captive. This isn't just about arithmetic. It's one of the most emotionally and politically charged aspects of the entire conflict for both sides. For Israelis, it's about bringing their people home, a sacred national duty. For Palestinians, it's about freeing thousands of prisoners from Israeli jails, many of whom are seen as political figures or resistance fighters. The history here is heavy. Both sides remember the 2011 deal for Gilad Shalit, where one Israeli soldier was exchanged for over 1,000 Palestinian prisoners. That deal set a precedent that looms large over these talks. Negotiations in Doha over the last several days have reportedly focused heavily on this very issue. Not just the numbers, but the specific identities of the Palestinian prisoners to be released. Israel is adamant about not releasing certain high-profile prisoners convicted of killing Israelis, while Hamas is equally insistent on securing the freedom of senior figures and long-serving inmates. The second major sticking point is a specific strip of land known as the Morag Corridor, also referred to as the Netzarim Corridor. Even as other territorial disputes are seemingly being resolved, Israel's insistence on maintaining its occupation of this corridor, which effectively bisects the Gaza Strip, separating the southern cities of Rafah and Han Yunis from the north, remains a significant obstacle. Its strategic value is immense. Control of this corridor would allow Israel to control all movement between the northern and southern parts of the Strip. It would prevent Gaza from functioning as a single, contiguous territory, and would give the Israeli military the ability to re-enter and conduct operations in the north or south at will. For Hamas, conceding this point would be tantamount to accepting a permanently partitioned and militarily indefensible Gaza, a powerful lever of control that they are deeply reluctant to hand over. This, combined with Israel's insistence on maintaining a presence in Rafah itself to control the border with Egypt, forms a core disagreement that has yet to be bridged. Amidst this complex web of demands and concessions, there's the American factor. The same Arab diplomat who spoke of cautious optimism also revealed what they described as a critical turning point for advancing the talks. Now, this is where the reporting, as relayed by the Turkish Anadolu agency, takes a peculiar and potentially confusing turn. The diplomat reportedly pointed to a recent meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Qatari Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani. According to this source, Trump conveyed that Washington is satisfied with the progress made so far. This detail, as reported, is highly unusual given that Joe Biden is the current U.S. president. It could be an error in reporting, a slip of the tongue by the diplomat, or perhaps a fascinating signal of other, less visible channels of communication involving figures from the former administration. Whatever the case, it highlights the central and sometimes murky role the United States, in one form or another, is playing behind the scenes, alongside the tireless efforts of Qatar and Egypt. The foundation for all of this is a 60-day ceasefire proposal. This proposal, drafted by the key mediators, was submitted to Hamas for review. In response, Hamas signaled its willingness to proceed, telling mediators it was ready to negotiate the ceasefire's implementation. However, the group also made changes to the Qatari proposal, which the Israeli government initially rejected as unacceptable. And yet, despite that strong public rejection, an Israeli delegation still traveled to Doha to continue the talks. That single fact tells you everything you need to know. No matter how tough the public rhetoric, both sides are still at the table because the alternatives are too grim to contemplate. So where does that leave us? We have a framework for a 60-day truce, likely to be implemented in phases. We have mediators working relentlessly to narrow the gaps. We have reports of progress on the most contentious issue of troop deployment, with new, detailed maps being considered. But we also have a hesitant Hamas, which has not yet formally responded, weighing the cost of peace against the price of sovereignty. We have a fundamental, deeply emotional disagreement over prisoner exchanges. And we have the immovable object of the Morag Corridor, a piece of land that represents the core conflict between Israeli security demands and Palestinian aspirations for a viable, contiguous territory. The coming days and weeks are absolutely critical.
Every headline will be scrutinized, every anonymous source quoted. We will be here, cutting through the noise to bring you the real story as it unfolds. To ensure you don't miss our next vital update on this and other global flashpoints, make sure you are subscribed to the channel and have your notifications switched on. The lines being drawn on the maps in Doha are a metaphor for the entire situation.
They are fragile, contested, and could be erased at any moment by a resurgence of violence or political intransigence. But for now, they also represent the only tangible path away from the abyss. These lines are more than just territory. They represent security for one side, a semblance of freedom for the other, and the faintest, most cautious glimmer of hope for the millions of people caught in between. Whether these lines will ultimately form a bridge to peace or simply become another line in the sand is the question on which the entire world is waiting for an answer.